mine. One shot, make it count, no smile. They talk, we do. Same pain breaks you or breaks through. Stand up. Let's go. No excuses, keep pushing. Stand up. Let's go. No excuses, keep pushing.
Welcome back to No Rank Required. Episode 2 isn't about a title. It's about weight. Collin Smith is a sergeant with the Clayton County Police Department, working in their training division. He's the guy responsible for making sure that all the officers are ready, not only legally, but physically and mentally as well, for when things go bad. From firearms to defensive tactics, use of force, real-world consequences. But Collin didn't grow up dreaming about this badge. He grew up in South Georgia. A sports kid, a creative kid, drawing, acting, wrestling, fighting. He describes himself as eclectic. Sometimes a rebel, sometimes a loner, sometimes the bully, and even sometimes he was bullied. Culture from his mom, character from his dad, truth, work ethic, and consequences. That foundation stuck. He didn't join this profession chasing glory. He just needed a job. What he found was something heavier than he ever expected. Not the physical side, he was ready for that. But the liability. The understanding that one careless moment, one bad decision, can end a career, wreck a life, undo years of good work. That pressure doesn't leave. It sharpens you or it breaks you. Early on in his career, he learned something that most people in uniform have to learn the hard way. That the family beside you on the street isn't always the family that's above you. When scrutiny comes, you better know your craft. You better know the law, and you better be able to stand on what you did and why you did it. He found himself in a very controversial incident that ended up making the local news. Most people shrink in those moments, but he didn't. He articulated, he justified, he stood on training and experience. And instead of being buried by it, he was moved into training others. That's leadership without rank. In his world, respect isn't demanded, it's earned. You walk the talk, you train, you show up when it gets ugly. Courage is currency. And credibility, it dies fast. Cowardness, dishonesty, selfishness. When the uniform comes off, he's a husband, a dad, a man trying to serve his family better than he served yesterday. Because legacy isn't built in headlines. It's built at home. This episode isn't about law enforcement or any politics tied to it. It's about pressure. It's about accountability. It's about standards when nobody's clapping. This is Collin Smith, and this is No Rank Required. All right, this is No Rank Required. I'm here with Collin Smith. I appreciate your brother coming on and give us your perspective of what life is like for you down in the South. I left a long time ago. I already forgot what it's like. Maybe you can tell me about the humidity a little bit. Before we get into it, who are you, man?
So my name is Collin Smith. I am a police sergeant with a Metro Atlanta area police department. I'm not going to say what agency I work for, but been there for about 10 years. Climbed up the ranks, did everything you could possibly imagine an officer could do. I've worked the road, obviously, to start with. Had a pretty brief stint in CID, our Criminal Investigation Division. Found out that really wasn't for me because I didn't like sitting behind a desk for too long, chasing leads that really didn't go anywhere. And then had some stuff happen to me while I was on the road that caught some people's attention. And they ended up putting me in our training division for several years. I was there for about 3 or 4 years teaching academy recruits, got certified in a number of different things. And then from there, got promoted, sergeant, pushed back to the road, as is typical within at least our agency. I don't know if other agencies act the same way. And then after being promoted, not short after that, they moved me back into training, working exclusively with our firearms training unit. But we don't just focus on just firearms. We do everything as far as in-service training, use of force, DT, et cetera. So you name it, I teach it within our law enforcement agency.
Nice. So like a jack of all trades. I like it, man. Training something, it's crazy when you talk to civilians. Not so much. I feel like in your career field and mine, it's probably very similar in terms of training that goes into operations and stuff. But when I talk to civilians outside of it, like I have a few guests lined up that are CEOs of like construction companies and stuff like that. You know, more blue collar type stuff. And it's always interesting to see how much effort they put into their training curriculum to get their people ready. And it's usually nowhere near the level of like what we're used to or accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always interesting to hear that perspective. But all right. Well, I appreciate you being on. So we're gonna jump right into it. So, when you're looking back into your childhood, when you grew up and everything, what do you think shaped your character the most and got you to where you are now?
Oh man, that's an easy response. I always tell people that I get a lot of my culture from from my mother, but my character came from my father. He was one of those guys that really tried to instill a lot of good ethics in me, talking about just working hard, being disciplined, honesty, integrity, things like that. And it translates easy into what I do as law enforcement officers, being that those are, kind of core tenets of what we try to aspire to within the profession. Obviously, everybody's going to have their own opinions about what police integrity looks like and professionalism within law enforcement, but it came very easy to me. I've always been a yes sir, no sir type of guy, and follow the line, follow the rules, be as honest as I can when I can, and he was the one that instilled all those core concepts in me and those principles. And, I'm thankful for it every single day. So
Nice. The it's always good to have the parents like put that
absolutely.
in. It's like it was my grandparents for the most part, especially my two grandfathers. Is they just that work ethic and drive I both got from both of them.
Absolutely.
My dad had a part in it when I was younger, but definitely my grandfathers. Okay. Well, I think you actually met both of them at one point. Yeah,
I did
yeah,
meet your grandfather. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's a whole other character and conversation we'll get into another
Yeah.
time.
Oh God.
But at one point, you described yourself as being eclectic, a rebel, a loner, athlete,
Yeah.
creative. So, like at that perspective, which version shows up the most today as an adult law enforcement? How does that work?
Hey, it's interesting. As I get older, I find myself being a little more reserved, a little more conservative in my thought processes and in my actions. But I still kind of let my eclectic side come out. I'm still kind of like a closeted nerd. I play video games. I watch, cartoons on TV and stuff like that. But yeah, if I could say the people that know me more or less would say I'm kind of like that, very straight and narrow type of guy, very very calm, very clear, I would, yeah, yeah. Like I said, I'm more the reserve type than the eclectic type, but still, it's I kind of let my nerd flag fly every once in a while.
For those of y'all
So,
don't know, Colin and I used to play WoW back in the day together. That's how
God, don't ever
nerdy
get me
that
started on
goes.
that.
Yeah, I still get shit when I talk at work. Like, they'll start talking about various things like WoW. I'm like, I jump into it hard. I haven't played in a while. I randomly get on there, but I totally get it, man. I'm right there with you. Yeah, that
Yeah,
stuff's
I've been
fun.
playing
I mean,
like decades. I haven't
Superman
touched
does
it.
it, dude. I mean, come on. If Superman could do it, we could
Yeah,
do
I don't have the glasses or the cape and the phone booth. I wear a uniform and a badge, and that's pretty much it. So,
it. There you go. Okay. Well, you mentioned your dad. You said he gave you the character. Your mom gave you the culture. So, what does that actually look like in how you do things today? You kind of alluded to a little bit, but you're I would assume, anyways. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know a lot of I get made fun of work a lot because I'll be like when they ask me questions, they're going to ask for like advice or whatever it is we're doing. I'm like, well, do you want Justin's answer or do you want
yeah.
Sergeant Aaron's answer? Because sometimes they mesh, sometimes they don't. Like, but how does that play with some of the things you mentioned going into how you do your day to day?
Well, in my current role, like I said, I work alongside a bunch of meatheads, and they're great guys, but they can be a little crude and a little crass sometimes, and kind of portray themselves as Neanderthals. They're all extremely knowledgeable. Like I said, I work with over 100 years of experience in my room, in my office, but I'll kind of say some things, or they look to me to be able to do certain things, like either on a computer or if I have to type up an Excel spreadsheet or something like this. Like, hey, Colin, how do you do this? And I'll go over there and I'll show them just like a couple clicks, and they're like, okay, well, look at the big brain on Brad over here. And I always get some flack and some crap for that, but they kind of look at me to kind of have the answers and some of the off color answers too. Like if they say a comment, I'll go in there and I'll say, well, and really give details and specifics. So I tend to be a lot of really detailed oriented in that respect. I mean, you have to be, especially if you're gonna like write good reports or take good accounts of things that you get involved in. But yeah, that's kind of how it shows in my everyday. But other than that, it's rules, and making sure that we follow safety protocols and stuff like that, just to keep everybody safe in training. But every once in a while, I'll get made fun of just because I made some nerd comment. So
No, man, I get it. But you guys, yeah, I get it, man. I gotta go on that all day long. I totally understand. The There's a lot of things. It's funny too because it get made fun. I've been in situations like that too, and they make fun, and then they come back. Hey, so when you actually playing, let me know. Hey, here's my gamer tag. Or I'm like, mother.
This part of the game. How do you tell me to do this? Figure it out, bro. I'm not gonna be your. I'm not gonna be your. I'm not gonna be your plug. I'm just not.
Yeah, yeah. You're not gonna play your closet identity with me.
That's
The
right.
okay. So at one point you had mentioned when we talked, you gave me the Q&A before. You mentioned that you were basically went from being this young guy, kid or whatever in South Georgia, and you ended up moving forward. You ended up jumping into the law enforcement world. But you said it wasn't for like chasing anything. It was more so you just really need a job. So when we get
Yeah.
into like necessity and purpose type thing, at what point do you feel like you moved from being that kid in Georgia just needed a job, and when did it actually stop being that job and become something more? Because we all hit that point, whether it's law enforcement, military, it could even be any other job, like I mentioned, the COs and stuff, that we eventually realize we're doing something more than just the paycheck, if you will. Like we're actually doing something for a purpose.
So the jump into it was just that. Is I had not too long graduated college. I was trying to make it on my own as a freelance. In fact, like I got a degree in something that has nothing to do with what I'm doing right now in law enforcement. I got a degree in graphic design of all things. Can still design my ass off, but like I said, it's not really my forte now. But yeah, I was struggling as a freelance designer, and my brother was already working for the agency at the time, so he let me know that we're having a hiring event, and I jumped at the chance to do it. And my justification for mine was one, because yeah, I did need a job, but the other part of me in the back of my head was like, I could really do this, and I had already been exposed to that sort of lifestyle, that culture, when I was in college. I had already trained with doing like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts with some pretty, excuse me, hard-nosed guys. One of the first guys to ever teach me how to fight, which I don't know if you know him, was John Lovell. If you follow him on YouTube, the Warrior Poet Society, he's blown up now, but he was the first guy that ever taught me how to fight. And just being around those type of people, having them instill that ethos into you about hard work and dedication and having a purpose other than just trying to look cool and wear the uniform and stuff like that. So it was a very easy transition for me. And the change from just being that kid that needed a job into making it somewhat of a calling, if you want to say that, was very early on. Like day one in pickup in our academy, I remember just getting my butt chewed out by the academy director. And I mentioned before, my brother was already working for the agency and had developed a really good reputation for himself. I think he'd had either already made the SWAT team or was already well established within the SWAT team. And I remember standing in front of the academy director, and he kind of came up behind me, whispered in my ears, and he said, "You've got some big shoes to fill." And I took that to heart. But I used it in a way to kind of fuel my drive and my energy to just really devote myself and be as the best I possibly could throughout the academy and throughout training, even to the point where I graduated as an honor graduate. So I was really proud of myself for that. But that change happened really early on because, like I said, just the devotion that I had to put into learning the material, learning the laws, learning criminal procedure, and on top of all the physical stuff that they teach you at the same time, which was really easy for me, having already trained with these tier one guys. But yeah, that was kind of a really quick, really easy transition from that naive kid to a purpose driven officer.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm glad that worked out for you. And it's always interesting too to hear when because how old were you when you jumped into that? Like what age?
I was actually really old, or I wouldn't say old, but I was older than most people that jump into it now. I was 35 when I
Yeah.
joined the academy.
So that's interesting. Even in the military, like we have when people join in police force stuff like that, when they come in older, they tend to do much better because they're more grounded in who they are. I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons. I get it, but it's always good to see that and hear that you could do something, jump into it. Randomly, we're watching the show called The Rookie, and
Hmm.
he joined the LAPD like at 45. I'm like,
Yeah.
I could do that, and then I go outside and run. I'm like, no, I can't. No, I
No,
can't.
no. Yeah, believe it or not, we still get those guys that come into the academy all the time that I'll never forget. We had one recruit come through that, just like when I was standing in front of the academy director, they asked you the questions like, "Hey, why do you want to do this job?" He had the balls on him to say, "Well, it was on my bucket list." And I was like, "Well, I, I hope you can carry that bucket the entire way through because we're not going to hold up on you just because you're age, bro." So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we see it a lot.
Yeah, I get it. It's that purpose we're talking about, man. Sometimes we just naturally need it, and sometimes later in life we feel we got it, but the physical limitations, it's difficult. I get it.
Yeah.
I'm glad it worked out, man. You jumped into it. So, given all that, and you did awesome in training, and you did as well as you did, and you are now where you are now. What was that first moment where you like really felt that weight, like this is me now, like that sense of that weight? That's all I can get at, like how important it was.
Uh, I don't know if I could really define a singular moment or when the first moment was, but I can tell you something that was kind of influential was the first time I made an arrest. It was kind of funny that my FTO, who was also a military guy, he was away on leave, or he was doing what is it you guys call it? Like he was the weekend warrior in
For the
essence, but
reservists, yeah, yeah.
yeah, he was a reservist. So um but he was my FTO and he just had to go away for a couple days. So I got picked up by another officer. I was actually the lieutenant of the sector that I was running, and got my first arrest. And it happened to be 4 arrests in in one night, in one singular call. And I kind of had some bragging rights because we went an entire week, my first week of FTO, not getting a single arrest. But that was kind of a defining moment for me. One, because I was anticipating it going into my first week of FTO. But then really being able to kind of put all the pieces together, the things that I'd learned in the academy and, tried to implement during my first week of being on the road, and hadn't quite done it yet. But when it finally came together, I was like, I've got this charge, I've got this charge, I've got this charge. I do everything right as far as putting on the cuffs and talking to people, and just everything just kind of came together seamlessly. And I was proud of myself, but at the same time, you kind of had this realization. It's like, there is an immense amount of power that comes with this job, and if not used correctly, you could really screw yourself over. In fact, one of the biggest things that we try to harp on when it comes to teaching new officers is understanding that liability that comes with everything that you do. I mean, there's a reason why things like qualified immunity is so important, because quite literally, you just putting your hands on somebody, if done for the wrong reasons, could get you sued, could get you put in jail, really, if they wanted to take it that far. So, the weight of that responsibility really hit me during that first arrest.
That's
So
good, man. Good to hear that too. I think it's also to me, I mean, but I feel this ties into your maturity, the older age you were that really clicks. Because even in the military, same thing. Like we come in and you have the alpha meatheads, like you mentioned, they want to go gung ho and all that. I remember my first deployment, I was one of those younger guys. Like we think it's all glory, and because you see it in the movies and stuff like that. The same thing growing up, see cops like they don't realize the gravity that plays into all the
I
actions
don't know.
in that moment. The
And some still don't. Like, we have officers now that just kind of fly by the seat of the pants, and I don't understand it. Like, these are veteran, seasoned officers that just kind of play it loose and don't really understand the ramifications of a lot of things they do. So, and that's one of my primary roles right now in teaching all of our officers, not just our recruits, is just making them understand that when you do your job, you have to get it right every single time. There is no exception. There is no excuse. If you mess up, it could be your job, it could be your life. Um, but yeah, it's important that you get it right every single time.
Yeah, I totally get it. One of the core values was excellence in all we do for the Air Force. I didn't think about it. But I totally get it, man. It's also that the Air Force like prides itself, military in general prides itself on training critical thinking. That process of
Yeah.
looking at everything you're doing, the steps, what comes next, what'll happen next. Unfortunately, just a lot of people, for whatever reason, are just incapable of processing that real time. So it sucks, and I get it. That kind of leads right into the next question. You had mentioned that liability hits you harder than the actual physical side, which is interesting enough because you came in a little bit older. So typically, I hear when people join the military, law enforcement, at older age, it's more difficult on the physical side. But I've always said you've been in shape. We worked out a few times when we were younger, so I can understand why that probably didn't hit you as hard. But the liability part, you kind of spoke on it. But so in all honesty, I think you answered. Unless you want to, is there anything to expand on that?
No, I like, I said a lot on it already, but it's just, I think a lot of people don't understand the true liability that comes with being a law enforcement officer, and the fact that we operate under the Constitution heavily. I mean, that is our guiding document for everything that we do. Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Eighth Amendment. If you're working in the jail or dealing with people in custody and things like that, so you have to know those things to start with, and any violations in those respects could land you in serious trouble. So. Um, eh, you got things like operating under color of law, and dealing with conspiracies, and all the things that people want to talk about today about how police officers just violating people's rights. Well, I got into a conversation with some guy about, he wanted to ask me about whether or not he did the right thing during a call, and he said that his sergeant kind of busted him because he wanted to sit there and blatantly say, like, "Oh, well, you violated somebody's rights by doing that." And I said, "Well, technically, you did, but you had a justification for doing so." And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't really understand. A lot of laymen don't understand, is that yes, we are granted the authority to violate your rights under probable cause, and it's not just we're doing it for shits and giggles. We're doing it because we have a reason for doing so, and there's a lot of articulation, a lot of reasoning, a lot of logic that goes into it. It's a lot of following the law. It's a lot of understanding the law, and then implementing it to the best of your ability. And there's always going to be room for interpretations when it comes to the law, but uh, first and foremost, you have to know it, you have to understand it, and you have to know the ramifications of doing it wrong. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, 100%, man. I'm right there with you. It's interesting when you get into that discussion about really anything. It doesn't even matter, like, it's your day to day what you do, or if it's anybody, especially in today's society and environment with social media being what it is. Everybody has a voice, and like even a fraction of a percent of people in the U.S. That's like a million people, whatever the number is. It's just a lot of voices being thrown out there. But it was some. I remember my first deployment. I came back. I got spit on coming back to the thing, and they didn't even know who I was or what I did. Like,
Right.
I could have been coming from Japan. They didn't know that. Like, and they're thinking I'm from Iraq. But it's your common civilian or person just in general in the US. It's interesting to see how they react to things like that. And a lot of times they do so out of emotion without actually fully understanding or grasping the situation at hand.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm not saying that makes them right or wrong all the time. It's interesting how people act without truly getting all the information first.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, 100%.
so then you run
Yeah,
into
like,
like, do you think civilians actually understand the pressure that you work in on a day to day? And I'm leaning towards a lot of them don't. It's just
oh, absolutely not. Like, eh, we like to talk about the immense amount of pressure and stress that we deal with every single day, and the things that we see, and the trauma that we take upon ourselves, that really isn't ours, but because we get exposed to it, we kind of internalize it to a degree. But it's difficult to people to understand the stress that goes into the job, and the fact that we have to carry it from call to call to call to call to call. There is until you punch out at the end of your shift, there's nothing that you can really do to decompress from seeing, and just to kind of tell you a story. One of the biggest things that hit me, and talks about that sort of trauma, that sort of experience, and that sort of stress that you deal with. I got dispatched to a vehicle accident where there were multiple ejections from the car, and one of them happened to be a 3-year-old girl that died on the scene, and it happened in a pretty big interstate, um, major traffic area. We had to shut down the entire interstate, and obviously people are pissed just because they can't get through, not really understanding what it is that is preventing them from just driving down the road. But to see this little girl with a white sheet draped over her, laying in the middle of the road, it's how would anybody be able to deal or process something like that? And then to see stuff like that, and then have your supervisor come to you and say, "Hey, we got calls holding. You need to go handle this." After just seeing that, you're like, What do you do?" Well, you got to suck it up, and you got to move on. And that kind of ties back to what you're saying about people understanding the stress that we have to go through every single day, every single call. You never really truly know what the officer, when they arrive on your call, if you happen to call the police, what they just saw on the previous call. So, um, if anything, I'd say, I try to encourage citizens just to give them a little benefit of the doubt, give them the respect that they they deserve. Obviously, if they don't give you any, then they don't expect to have any in return. But just know that you have no idea what that officer just faced during the previous parts of their shift. So it's difficult sometimes.
No, I can definitely understand that, man. I can't even imagine what that'd be like. Um, yeah, the comparisons that I have, like we operate in a different realm when we
Mhm.
go over there versus here. So I couldn't even imagine that. Like, but I will say, for one, sorry you had to experience that. Those things are always hard to see and deal with. Um, Two, I can only imagine it's probably similar. It's a similar concept with you guys as it is with us. Like we're typically harder on ourselves in terms of a team
Absolutely.
dynamic and individually. So do you think the scrutiny from the public is worse, or from from your organization, or from your team, whatever?
I would say that the scrutiny from outside is louder, but the scrutiny from inside is more harsh, I should say. A lot of people don't realize it, but the biggest critics of bad policing is police themselves. Because anytime something bad happens that makes the news, um, the first people to usually chime up about it are other officers kind of giving their 2 cents on the matter. And the reasons why they're doing that is either one, to try to justify whatever outrage they know may be potentially coming from the public. But two, if it is a legitimately bad incident and the officer performed negligently or poorly, we're going to say something about it because that officer's actions make us look bad. And it's kind of like the apple that ruins the entire barrel. We may not necessarily have anything to do with whatever made the news, but we get looked down upon nonetheless. I'm teaching a class right now talking about community policing with my officers, and during the parts of one of the presentation, I talk about how a singular incident can completely affect the legitimacy that police have across the entire board. Perfect example of that was something like George Floyd. None of us at my agency, no one at my agency had anything to do with George Floyd, but nonetheless we got condemned for it. So it's kind of a lose-lose battle. But just kind of go back to your question, I would say that we judge ourselves way more harshly than I think the public ever would. And just because we try to maintain that level of integrity, that level of excellence in everything that we do.
No, that's fair. I mean, I totally get it. Same thing with us. Um, I still run things through my head consistently about things I messed up or whatever. So I get it. Kind of getting into our Q&A earlier, I kind of, in your intro reel, I kind of talked to it, but I don't know if everybody's gonna understand it, and it's hard to grasp sometimes. But you had mentioned learning early on that the team beside you isn't always the team that's above you. So getting into like trust and scrutiny, that type thing. When did you realize that were you trying to say that you felt like you were more knowledgeable about a situation than people questioning you? Is that kind of what you're alluding to, or?
So no, there were kind of two parts of that. One was the incident where I told you about that kind of uh, had a little controversy behind it, but I've been exposed to I'll just say it, like the supervisors that I've had within my career, some better than others, but then there are plenty that will go out of their way to make it seem like they never do anything wrong, that they did everything they could to make sure that the officer did what they were supposed to do. But if something happens, something inevitably happens that has to be dealt with or corrected, or the officer has to be reprimanded or anything like that. It's like they almost go out of the way to throw the officer out on the limb. It's like they don't even bother trying to uh, help them out in any way, shape, or form. I can remember um, one incident where I had a supervisor that was looking into a group of me and my shift mates, involving some woman that needed to get into her house because apparently she was dating the guy that lived there, and she had left some of her stuff there, and guy wasn't home at the time to be able to go into the house or to allow her in the house or for us to really even talk to him to kind of arrange things. But um, I didn't even show up on the call except for like even as it was closing. Like I showed up just because, hey, my partners are there. I'm gonna see what's going down. And literally as I pull up, they're walking back to their car. So I had nothing to do with it at all. But nonetheless, I get dragged into this particular investigation because what inevitably ended up happening was the officers, who are really good friends of mine, still are, basically told this woman, hey, you can't go into the house. You can't get your stuff now. We're not going to help you get your stuff now. Just understand that you have to deal with it and you have to wait for another day or come back when he's here. So that way we can kind of deal with it on a more civil level. Well, come to find out that once we had left the call, she kicks in the front door and just grabs her stuff and leaves. And once the guy comes back home, finds his front door smashed in, he, for whatever reason, said that we were the ones that allowed her in the house, which never happened. But nonetheless, I get called in, I get questioned about it, and my other shift mates got called in and questioned about it. It just simply, they went out of their the supervisor doing the immediate investigation went out of their way to make it seem like we were the bad guys in the situation, even though we didn't do anything wrong. In fact, we basically told this woman that, hey, this is what you can do, and she went against that of her own volition. So it's that type of thing that I initially started talking about, where it was the team that you work beside and the team that or is not so much the people that are above you looking out for you, and really the way it should be. Um, but the talking about needing to be the part about needing to be more knowledgeable than the people that are above you. Um, I've run into some supervisors and people that are supposed to be in the know that clearly aren't. And we always joke about how just because you've got chevrons or bars on your shoulder or strut or shirt doesn't instantly make you the smartest person in the room. So uh, I'll give you the respect of your rank, but at the same time, if you say something stupid, then, or if you say something that's illegal in our case, or not within case law or policy, I'm going to call you out on it. But I've sat in front of, more so now that I'm in training, I hear these officers talk about what they can and can't do, or what officers should or shouldn't do, and I'm like, that's not policy, or that's not case law, or that's not what we teach. So I don't know where you're getting that information. So it became very apparent to me early on, like after the incident that I just told you about happened, to be more knowledgeable about what it is we do, how we do it, what's policy, what's procedure, what's law, what's case law. So that way, if I ever hear something like that come out of their mouth, the first thing I'm gonna do is say, like, well, that's not what's written down, or that's not how I was trained, or we've never done that. Just having a justification for myself, more for my own personal liability, but also to be able to stand up for other officers. I've had to go to bat for other officers that have been, in essence, thrown under the bus for doing what I may have taught them to do or told them to do, that was well within policy, well within reason, well within the law, but they still get chastised by their supervisors just because it wasn't how they would have done it, or it didn't look good. That's the big thing now with us, especially when it pertains to like uses of force. The big blanket response to a lot of the use of forces that we see is like, oh, well, it didn't look good. Well, I'm sorry, no use of force ever looks good. It's going to look ugly by nature, but that doesn't mean it's unreasonable or wrong. So understanding what you can and can't do in those situations, it goes a long way to protecting yourself. And if you're the guy in the know, then it's almost incumbent upon you to kind of protect people that you're standing beside as well.
No, that's a great point, man. It happens in the military too, man. I can't tell how many times that, for better or worse, doesn't matter. We get put into positions where you just may not know what you're doing, but you have to act the part. Like some of the best leaders I've ever had, they'll be straight up with you and be like, "Look, guys, I don't know shit about this. I'm gonna lean on you. I got your back. Let me know how I can help you get you where you need to go."
Those are the
Um,
best kind.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, you got to know your lefts and rights. Like accountability is a big thing I talk about all the time, and sadly, just too many people aren't held accountable. I even mentioned in the last episode with Sean, like I was fortunate enough in the job I'm in now where I have extremely knowledgeable master sergeants that work around me that I know I don't have to like worry. Like I know they're kicking ass. I'm like, what can I do to help you? Because unfortunately, a lot of stuff we do in my job now is just not something I grew up doing or knowledge. I'm just not knowledgeable on everything they do. It's a different generation. That's why I'm retiring. So it
Yeah, know your
happens.
strengths and know your people's strengths as well. Like when I was a supervisor on the road, I had one guy that was just, a gung ho drug guy, and me not really knowing anything about drugs or caring much about drugs for that matter. If I ever came into contact with stuff like that, yeah, I would call him up, and he's my subordinate. It's like I don't care. I'm gonna play on the strengths of the people that are under me or next to me, because that's who needs to be dealing with this, not me, and I'm gonna defer to their knowledge. So.
Oh, I totally get it, man. The so I guess leaning into that, like one, I'm not sure if that's the incident you had mentioned that kind of changed your career path. If it's not, then we'll get to that in a second. But
Sure.
based on everything that you just got into, how do you think any of that changed how you do things? It shifted your craft, if you will. Like, how did you kind of do change from what you're doing to how you do things now? I guess the best way to put it.
Well, it was a slow, gradual progression. Obviously, you have to kind of get have sand kicked in your face a couple times to realize, hey, I'm never gonna let that happen again. So, any officer can probably tell you that they've been in trouble at least once in their career, and they're gonna make sure that they don't make the same mistakes twice. And that's really what it was. Is that I through trial and tribulation, or through seeing other people kind of go through the same issues, I took it upon myself just to kind of be a student of the craft. And we always talk about that. There's one of the guys that I work with that likes to say that a lot is being a student of the craft, or being a student of the profession, knowing the law, knowing case law, and if you're for any particular agency, knowing whatever the policies and procedures are. And on top of that, being proficient enough in your ability to be able to perform to a level that you're not just having to pretend, in essence, but you can actually do what it is that you say, or for it, you know, I don't know if there's any other way to explain it, but just you have to be mentally and physically capable of performing within our job. And if you don't even take the time to study it, or if you don't even take the time to get out on the range, or if you don't even take the time to get in the gym, it's not going to work out for you. It's just not. So that kind of those types of incidents is really what propelled me to be the best, and to want to become an instructor. I already had been an instructor on a private professional level before I became a law enforcement officer, law enforcement instructor. Um, but it was just something that had already instilled in me, is that I'm going to be the best I can, and if I'm not, then I'm going to learn from the best, and continue to kind of achieve that level of excellence.
No, that's good, man. I'm glad you have that way forward. It's always good to hear that, basically. So I guess leaning into like the incident you had mentioned in the Q&A that kind of changed how you do things, like what can you tell me about that?
So yeah, one of my defining moments in my career that essentially transitioned me from just being a road officer to a trainer and instructor was, I got dispatched to a uh, it was a disturbance call, but it had a lot of elements attached to it. It was basically some meth head cracked down on his mind, started assaulting people inside of a deli in a strip mall. Um, you can actually, I think there's still video of the incident on our local news channel. I can try to provide that to you sometime if you wanted to ever share it with people. But uh, basically, this guy walks into this deli, starts assaulting people inside the deli, starts throwing chairs, starts breaking windows, just being an absolute nuisance. Some other interesting facts just to kind of show you how whacked out this dude was. I think it was in winter. I just can't remember the exact month, but it was really cold outside. If you look at the video, I'm in like full jacket and bundled up and gloves and all that mess, and he's basically standing there in nothing but jeans and no shirt on. So the weather and the elements had no effect on him whatsoever. In fact, he did get into a fight with a couple people inside the deli, but nothing phased him. In fact, he got pushed over and hit a couple times. Like it just he seemed to shrug it off like it was nothing. But when I arrive on the scene, he's standing out in the middle of this parking lot of the strip mall, and he's got an electrical cable in his hands. I don't know where he got it from, but he was using that to actually like whip people inside the deli. So I encounter him in the parking lot. I drove up pretty close to him in my patrol car, but I don't immediately get out because he's got the cable in his hands. And I'm glad I did because he took the cable and he threw it against the side of my car. Like he tried to whip the side of my patrol car. So smart decision, backed up my patrol car and got some distance between me. As soon as I got out, drew my taser, pointed it at him, and we kind of get into a little bit of a standoff. He was a Hispanic guy. He wanted to pretend like he didn't speak English. He spoke perfect English. He just wanted to pretend like he didn't understand me. So start talking to him back and forth, and eventually I get to the point and I say, "Hey, if you take one more step towards me, I'm gonna pop you." And sure enough, he did. Hit him with a taser. He falls down, drops the wire, which he did what I got him to do, or he did what I wanted to do. And then from there, the fight was on. Closed the distance, got into a little bit of ground match. Was able to stand back up, but I managed to wrestle him back down to the ground, get him in kind of like a rear mount position. And thankfully enough, we don't see this hardly ever. But I had a good Samaritan that jumped in and tried to help me just pin him down to the ground. So good guy. I actually talked to him after everything was over and done with, and he was like thanking me for helping him, and I was thanking him for helping me. Just because, like I said, you don't see that happening ever, really, in our profession. But it just kept getting weirder and weirder and weirder throughout the entire fight. He ended up biting me on my hand, on my forearm multiple times. Like I said, I'm wearing thick clothing, so I've got like a full sleeve, a jacket, and he's still able to bite through both of those to the point where he was able to break skin. So I ended up having to go to the hospital to get a tetanus shot or something like that, just to make sure he wasn't transmitting anything to me. But we actually ended up subduing him. And during the last parts of the fight, I ended up putting him into a vascular neck restraint, which, according to our policy, was prohibited except for in situations where it was deadly force. I had a lot of people after the incident tell me that I would have been well within my rights to shoot this guy. I just, for whatever reason, didn't feel like I wanted to kill somebody that day. So I decided to use my taser instead and fight with him man to man. But nonetheless, eventually get on top of him, put him in the neck restraint, and put him out. Gave me plenty of time then to throw the handcuffs on. That wasn't what caught a lot of people's attention. The reason why it became so controversial initially was that while all this was going down, there was about a group of civilians and bystanders standing about 20 or 30 yards away, and one of them obviously had a cell phone camera and was recording the whole incident. My backup officer that showed up to help me, my first initial backup officer, was a guy that coincidentally I'd been in plenty of fights before. He'd been my backup, but he runs up, and while I'm laying on top of the guy, he immediately starts like soccer style kicking him in the side of the ribs. Keep in mind that again, this guy he's drugged out. He's not feeling any sort of pain. So really the pain compliance aspect was valid. It was reasonable. It just was ineffective. But nonetheless, people just see an officer, one officer laying on top of a guy and another officer coming up and soccer style kicking him in the ribs. Of course, that's going to draw people's attention. So that video ended up making social media or hitting social media before I even got out of the hospital. One of my buddies sent this to me. He's like, "Hey, look what's on Facebook already." It's like, "Oh crap, now I got to deal with this." My supervisor had already told me, he's like, "Hey, you might want to go ahead and call your wife and tell her that, hey, you made the news, but don't be alarmed or anything like that." Which I really wasn't, because I knew everything that I did was may have not been within policy, but according to use of force doctrine it's perfectly reasonable. But nonetheless, the incident got called before our review board and our internal investigations division, and I had to go up and kind of testify and plead my case and the reasonings for why for what I did. And I had a senior instructor that was on the interview panel ask me, he's like, "Hey, have you ever done something like this in your job before?" And my response to it was like, "Well, no, I haven't, but I've done it plenty of times in other things." I'd already told them that, or they were well aware that I had trained jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts before even becoming a police officer. So I knew the ramifications and the potential dangers of using the technique. I knew what it could do to him. Knew what was going to happen to him afterwards. And I was able to articulate all these. And it was because of that articulation, because of that reasoning, that I never got reprimanded for it. I never heard anything else about it. And they closed the case and they said, "Hey, you're good to go." So I was kind of thankful about that. And that just kind of drew their attention towards me, seeing like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it. So they figured, you'd probably be a good candidate for training and instructing. And that's when I was soon after that incident moved to CID. But as I said, I didn't stay in CID very long because they moved me into training within probably a month or two of me being there because of that incident. Or I like to think it was because of that incident that they moved me down to training.
Nice, dude. So do you think after all that and that experience, that everything you had to go through from start to finish, not just the incident with the individual, but all the scrutiny that came with it,
Mhm.
do you feel like that made you better or more guarded, or were you more open to standing? Like, how did that affect you?
If I'm being honest, I think that was one of the first times I'd ever been kind of tested on how well I knew my craft. But I kind of had an advantage having already done the physical part of it before. But after the incident happened, I had talked to several people and they kind of coached me through, hey, these are some things you need to say. These are some things you need to do. This is the way in which you need to explain it. And that, kind of propelled me to really look deeper into the use of force. I wasn't an instructor at the time. I hadn't even gotten into that part of my career yet. But it made me kind of realize that, hey, there is a proper way to be able to explain the things that we do and the reasons why we do it. And it's not just because, oh, well, I thought it would work at the time. It's no, you have to have, there's a not a step-by-step possible process to being able to explain your actions, but just being able to be objectively reasonable about what it is that you do and how you do it and being able to explain those elements to what you did. So that was my first real test, I should say, that kind of eventually held me into the next phase of my career.
No, that's great, man. It's always good to hear like you're able to take that challenge and win, or not win. That's probably the wrong word, but basically overcome that obstacle, if you will. Um, So it gets right into it when we talk about credibility and courage. You talked about respect being earned and not demanded. So what exactly, in terms of everything you've gone through, what earns respect in your world, whether it's at work or if it's just in your day-to-day life as a man, like what earns respect in your world?
Well, there's a lot of different things, but I think when I kind of put on the Q&A, it was like being able to talk the walk, or to walk the talk, the other way around. Um, it's one thing to kind of talk your way in and out of a situation and be able to explain yourself, but if you say something, or if you say that you're going to do something or you can do something, you better be able to do it. Um, Courage for us is paramount in the fact that if I know I'm about to get in a fight, I want the person next to me, one, capable of being a fight, and then also being the one to start it right there with me. Because I can't tell you, I see it now in training more than I ever saw it on the road, thankfully, or however you want to look at it. But uh, the unwillingness for officers to engage is crazy. And whether that has to do with them being uncomfortable with the liability and the scrutiny that comes after getting into a use of force, or really anything they do, being able to explain their way through it. Um, we see it more often now than I did when I was an officer on the road. But it's those sorts of things that I said builds those credibility and builds that trust in other people. I always joke and say that I'd rather have manpower is an issue in every agency, but I'd rather be working alongside two or three solid officers that are worth their salt and know what they're talking about and know what they're doing than having an entire stable of officers that don't know their ass from their elbow and couldn't talk their way out of a wet paper bag. Um, you have to be about this job. I saw a quote not too long ago that I thought was pretty poignant. We always talk about having minimum standards within any sort of agency, or maybe even branches of the government. Minimum standards to me is a joke, because it's just that is the bare minimum. It's what we will allow you to suck at, but still be able to make it through. Where, quite frankly, you should be looking to exceed the standard, or else you shouldn't do the job. Um, I Plain and simple. If I know I'm about to get into some trouble, I need somebody that's willing to get into it with me. and also be able to explain the reasons why we did exactly what we did.
Man, I'm right there with you. I could rant on this all day long. Like same thing with government, Air Force, military. We have like standards that are minimal, like the minimum requirement. For instance, like PFAs, like physical wellness and workout stuff like that. The There's a lot of people, like, it ranges, like, 75 is, like, the lowest you can score before you fail,
Mhm.
and usually people are like, "Oh, I'll just aim for an 80." I'm like, "Dude, that is almost middle. You should be scoring
Yeah.
that on your worst day, like, you're hungover or you're just getting over being sick. Like, that should not be your standard, like, "I'm gonna get a
No.
78, I'm good." Like, that is such bullshit. But, there's other things too in terms of, like, minimum. Most people just aim for that minimum, and I'm like, "You're in the wrong career field if that's what you're aiming for."
Oh,
Um
100%. Like we've got guys with me working at the firing range now. Most often, I get guys come in here in the state of Georgia. 80% is qualifying, and we get officers that struggle sometimes to even hit that, and then we get other officers that are like, "Yeah, I barely made it over the 80 threshold." And I was like, that still means 20% of the time you're missing the target. I don't like those odds if I have to bring you into a gunfight. I'm sorry, I just don't. So do
No,
better or don't do it at all.
I'm right there with you, man. The It's weird how that's lost on so many people, but as long as we keep, I'm glad we got people out there pushing that standards. That's what matters, in my opinion, is we keep telling people to aim for better.
Mhm.
We should always be better tomorrow than we are today, type mindset. You'd be surprised how many people don't live by that. It's
I
very
know. No,
mind
just
blowing.
trying to skate by. Just
Yeah,
trying to
it's
skate by. That's it.
crazy. The So kind of getting to the leadership aspect of all of that, because again, I constantly bring it back to that. But like, what happens to a team, do you think, when basically the leader won't basically stand, like, basically hold their ground? Kind of what you alluded to earlier when we were talking. Either A, because they're not knowledgeable, or B, they just don't want to put themselves out there in fear of them looking bad or getting caught up, or they can't explain themselves. That's kind of like that cowardness and leadership. So A, I feel like you probably have based on what you just told me, but have you experienced that? And if you have, what does it do to that team when that leader does that?
Well, I absolutely have experienced it. I think a lot of officers can say that they've experienced it to some degree. We just had shift bids within my agency, and that's the opportunity where officers can kind of pick and choose the different shifts and locations that they go. And it's always a thing that the officers will follow the supervisors that they know they can trust, or that they know or think are looking out for their best interests. Anytime you get an officer that gets that reputation of being only out for themselves, that shift or that sector turns into a ghost town, just because, or anytime gets stuck kind of working alongside them, and other people hear about it, like, oh man, like, I can't believe you're working for that guy. It's a cancer. It really is. That if especially when it comes to supervisors, your first responsibility should be looking out for your people. If you're not doing that, then you need to hang up your stripes, or give them to somebody else, because you clearly are not about it. You need to be the one that has no problem with the higher ups chewing your ass out for something that your subordinates did, because you should be the one sitting there saying, like, no, well, they did the right thing. If they didn't do the right thing, then obviously you're going to handle that on your own level. But you should never let it rise to the level to where somebody above you has to deal with problems that are your responsibility. Um, but yeah, officers will supervisor shop, and they'll follow the guy that they think is about them and not just about themselves.
Man, I could not have said it better. 22 years in, I can't tell how many times I've experienced, and I will admit there's sometimes I just don't have all the information. So I get it. I'm biased in certain situations that I'm tied to. I get that. But then there's other times they're just clear in your face that these people just do not want to put themselves
No,
in the spotlight, I guess is the best way to put it.
no,
Because they just want to keep, that's what they care about. That frontline supervisor, like you're getting, I mean, that is their sole jobs to take care of not only
yes,
their people, but themselves and the peers around them, setting that example of what to be like. And man, so many people miss that mark. But I get it, it's a learning experience. We all grow into it, but sometimes, man, you get to a point, I don't know what the line is, but you get to a point and you're like, okay, you've been doing this for long enough. You should not be making these same mistakes, type thing. But I mean, it's that training thing we had talked
you
about
know better.
earlier, man. You got to focus on that training and constantly give that feedback. And that's the other big part I feel like we miss so much in society, in every realm of discussion when it comes to any job, is like feedback. Like, in my experience lately, I feel like I said this in the last episode too, is like, we're so good at telling people when they're awesome. Like, oh man, this is amazing. You kicked ass, whatever. But we
Mhm.
never pull them to the side and be like, well, you did great over here. Here's some things you kind of mess up on.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion or whatever. And if you can have statute or policy to back it up, it's even better. Because personal feelings, I kind of laugh at sometimes. I'm like, that's cool, you think that, but show me where I'm actually wrong.
Absolutely, yeah. No, nobody learned anything from a soft critique. It's like
Mhm,
if I'm going to tell you exactly where you failed, but I'm also going to build you up for it. Or I'm going to teach you how to not do it that way the
mhm.
second time around.
People just don't want to be the bad guy, man. I've come to learn that confrontation scares people. Um, and I don't know if it's just my baby blue
Which is
eyes or
crazy to me,
whatever.
especially in a profession like this. Is like the one of the core elements of both being in the military, being in law enforcement is conflict resolution. And if you can't deal with somebody being in your face, or if you can't deal with somebody calling you a bad name, or telling you that you suck in whatever area, then you know you shouldn't be there. It's like we've got a lot of people with soft skin, and you know they're afraid of hearing a 4-letter word that you know or something. You know, you suck at this. Oh, okay. I mean, if people tell me I suck at something, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make sure I do better next time. It's not like I'm gonna be going on my fields about it.
No, I'm right there with you, man. I need someone to be direct. I'm very honest with people. Like, if you think you're gonna say something, I'm just gonna catch on to what you're saying. I'm just letting you know I'm dense. You guys say that shit direct to me. That shit will go right over my head, and I will miss every point of it. So you gotta be very direct. But I also challenge people when they do. I'm like, tell me I'm doing bad at something, but explain to me
Hmm.
why it's wrong. Don't just say because you feel like it's not the right way. Like, make sure you come correct. Like, you have your facts, because especially just been as I hate bringing that up, but just as much of experience as I have, I've been in like, I'm not going to do something without knowing 2, 3 steps down the road
Hmm.
why I'm doing it, or I'm not just going to jump to something because one thing happened. Usually, I need 2 or 3 or 4 things to happen before I actually take action. Depending on what we're talking about, obviously, but the
How similar like the teaching methodologies are within the military as opposed to the law enforcement? And again, I can't really speak to how all law enforcement agencies teach, but do you guys ever use like the student centered feedback models and things like that?
So yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know if it's exactly the same as what you're saying, but so a lot of my training with the Army, especially like deployment stuff, we do things called after action and stuff like that. And a lot of that's tied into the student engagement, like what was good, what was effective, what did you learn from it, what can we
Yeah.
do to enhance it, like things like that. So they take a lot, and a lot of the training we do now, even just teaching critical thinking, for instance, we give like feedback forms, like what did you like about this course? So it may not be exactly the same what you're saying, but we do pull the data from the students, and basically it's a critique on ourselves. Like, what did you actually learn from this? What could we make it better?
So with us, like it was kind of a revolutionary concept for us. Myself and another guy that I work alongside actually attended a use of force instructor training course that was put on by the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and in it they introduced to us the student centered feedback model. And we've adopted that in everything that we do now. And before that, it was always just the instructor saying, "Hey, you sucked at this. You could have done better. You could have done this." And there was very little engagement with the student or with the officer. And a lot of times, it left them leaving defeated, saying like, "Oh God, man, I really shit the bed." Then during that scenario or whatever the case may be. But with the student centered feedback model, what we've noticed is it's no longer about us telling them what to do or how to do or that they did something wrong. It's all about them realizing that, hey, this is where I either messed up or this is where I could have done better. Not necessarily that they did anything wrong, but it's just like, hey, you're a little lacking in here, or can you tell me why you thought this way? And then they slowly come to that realization. It's like, oh, I should have done that, or next time that happens, I'm going to do this instead. So it's done wonders for us. I was just curious if that was kind of something you guys did similarly in the military.
Oh, no, so any field exercise, that's very prime in everything they do in terms of even clearing a room, like in terms of who goes left, who goes right, up, down, scan, middle, this type of stuff. Or even just like from like going to scanning across the wall, it's always like wall, body, weapon, or whatever. Looking
Hmm.
for like pieing a door or whatever. They got a lot of that's fed into like who you put in line, who's first up, side by side. And that feeds back from the students. You walk them through the steps. And a lot of that's just tied to educating them not only what's right in front of you, but what's step 2, what
Absolutely.
step 3 is coming. You
Yeah.
need to know those so that you can properly adjust and make the decision that you're in right now. Do you go left? Do you go right? Type thing. I know that's simplistic, but essentially it's a similar model. Um, Even from an assessment perspective, from like the intelligence side of the house, the a lot of people have to they get tunnel vision into one thing. They start going down this rabbit hole, if you will, is what we call it. Like you're chasing something, but you need to pull yourself back. We teach them you can be missing X, Y, and Z over here, and you're walking them through that that case, if you will, trying to showcase what you're missing, what to look for, type thing. So yeah, it's a great training model. I love it. All right. It's good to know that training doesn't just it's also real weird too, because I'm coming up on retirement and I'm trying to like figure out what I want to do when I grow up, type thing.
Mhm.
So like I kind of really found my niche like over the past year or two, like teaching. Like I started teaching a bunch of the courses around and stuff. Um and I'm really falling into that. I even had one guy with the Secret Service like offer me a job to come be an instructor down there with some of the stuff we do. Um and it's just interesting to see a lot of the models that we have are very similar to law enforcement in terms of that I automatically think people just know. Like, I don't know why. Maybe because I'm like, well, I got it. I'm assuming you guys are getting it too. And it actually turns out
Yeah.
that it's not as the information itself. Like, you and I could go Google and find all the information if we wanted to, but the application within each sector, wherever you're looking at, isn't always readily available or taught. And it blew my mind to
No.
find that out.
Yeah, and it's
Uh,
also not standard. Like, just like you said, expecting people to kind of think and act the same way just because you're in whatever field or level of expertise is that, we had an outside agency come and train with us for like a weapon certification class, and we started asking them about like, hey, what are your protocols for this, and what would you do if this situation happens? And they looked at us like we had a horn growing out of our head. It's like we've never even thought of that. We've never even done stuff like that. So, well, here you go. And we're trying to impart some knowledge and wisdom on you. But yeah, it's strange that it's not more standard. It's not more common amongst the different branches of military or even law enforcement.
Forgot the mute button there. The it's COVID. I'm still learning. The
Got it.
It's it's interesting too, that same training model, believe it or not, if you like take a step back and look at the maybe not the same questions and scripting, if you will, but you'd be really surprised after talking to some of the people in like the construction business I was talking about, just the training and effectiveness that comes from teaching people how to line the payroll up, or just the
Hmm.
muscle memory type teaching, like this is what you do here, this is what you hear. That type training model just does not exist. Now, obviously, I'm not an expert in construction and payrolls and all that, but there's a way to apply that training model we have into that, like how they do their day to day. And I was walking them through that just because he's a buddy of mine, and they're trying it out. I'm still waiting to hear how it comes back. But and then having the Q&A at the back end from asking them like, what did you learn type thing? What can we do better? Because that stuff just wasn't happening. And it's actually interesting. I saw something on Amazon. They actually applied it because a lot of military vets went into there, and actually law enforcement people went into the Amazon sector, and they work all these places. I don't honestly, I can't really tell you what it is, but they basically go in there and they're training warehouse folks how to day to day and operational procedures within their warehouse. Blah blah. I guess I don't know the exact intricacies of it, but they're applying how we teach in the military law enforcement to office workers or warehouse workers how to do their job, whatever that looks like. But it's working, so it's crazy to hear that, or it's good to hear that rather. Um, all right, so it's actually this kind of gets into like I've had to deal with this my whole career because a lot of stuff that I've done like you just can't bring home and talk about. It's just the nature of the business thing. Very similar to a lot of stuff for you, whether you can or can't. A lot of times you just don't want to because you need to be able to kind of let it go, just relax. So you get into like all that pressure. Like, how do you not take it home? And I guess you said early on you made it a rule not to bring it home, but how hard is it to do that? Like in your world?
Well, it's not really hard now, I guess, just because I've been doing it for so long. But even when I was a young officer on the road, it's not like I came home and I told my wife that, hey, this is what I saw on the road and stuff like that. And there was a couple reasons why. One, because I didn't want to really traumatize her of stuff like that happening, and two, just the things that we nerd out on in our job are things that nobody outside the profession really understands. So me talking about criminal procedure and case law and stuff like that, if I was to start talking with her about that, or really anybody outside of work, they're not going to understand. More or less, they may not even care, which is a whole other conversation. But yeah, I kind of told myself really early on that whatever happened, when I clock out, I clock out, and I don't even answer my phone. I've got a county phone, or a department issued phone that I don't even answer, even though if the chief was to call me right now, I still wouldn't answer it just because it's like this is my time. But I also use that as kind of like a barrier and a buffer to say that, hey, um, this is what I do during my job, and whatever I face in my job, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, but also know that I'm still a family man. I'm still a father, a husband, off the clock, and those are going to be that is my job once I hang up the gun and badge. So it's not difficult now. I understand how for a lot of people it does become difficult. There's a reason why law enforcement, I'm sure military kind of has a similar, if not the same or higher statistics about um, divorce rates, suicide rates. It's just because they don't know how to manage that type of stress. They don't know how to manage or deal with the things that they see in the job outside of it. Again, I talked earlier about me teaching a community policing class to my officers during our in-service training. And one of the questions or one of the things that I bring up is like anytime that we have a gripe or an issue about the job or about the agency or whatever it is that we're facing in a job, the first people that we take it to is the buddy to our left and our right, because they're the only ones that really understand or much less care. So it was kind of because of that reason, and it was also because I was trying to preserve a little bit of innocence that my wife may have about what it is that I do, because it's not pretty, it's not glamorous, as much as TV and news and the media, both entertainment and news media, wants to paint us, however they want to paint us. Um, this is a job that is not for the faint of heart. Um, and not everybody really needs to know what it is that we do or how we do it. I expect them to know certain aspects of it. Like I expect them to know kind of what the law is and what the scope of our authority is. But in terms of the intricacies and the little details and the trauma that we deal with, no, I'll keep that to myself. And maybe that might be a detriment. I don't know. I'll find out later, once I finally decide to hang it all up. Maybe it may hit me all at once, but um, I feel like I've done a really good job of being able to manage whatever stressors or whatever issues that I face and keep it solely at my job, not at home.
No, man, I get it now. Dude, I wish I had a good answer for you, man. But um, I've told you some stories I dealt with when I was over there. But what we really didn't get into is back when you and I first met. It was like, I don't know, it was like 2009, 10 frame, right? Somewhere in there, if I remember correctly. I mean,
Yeah, it was about that time.
I think I had just come back from Iraq. I can't remember. It was one of those deployments. But that
Yeah,
very
I remember you tell like the one of the very first things you told me was like I got blown up. I was like, okay, cool.
yeah, that
So
was yeah. IEDs were big over there, but the one of the big things I didn't even talk about back then very much, and I've come to learn how to deal with it now. But that deployment, I lost a really good friend. Is that very instant you're talking about? He died. And it was really hard to deal with. Even to this day, it's like, oh, I just felt it just now saying that to you. Like, it's very hard to deal with that. And even to this day, I still don't even talk about it too much to people. And the only reason I'm even bringing it up is because some of the similar things, why it may not be the same scope where we were in either, but it's still the trauma that we're internalizing. And
sure.
it's very difficult to deal with that. And then there's a lot of ripple effects that come along with that you have to deal with it. You don't realize it hits you much later.
Mhm.
Like I used to be able to just block that shit off. I'd go get my beer and do whatever. But as I've gotten older, I've started to realize a lot of those layers that I built are breaking much. They're much more fragile than I realized they were. And good or bad or whatever. It comes with just being old, I guess. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that shit out.
And I have to imagine it's the same. Is like, do you find yourself being less empathetic about things now? I mean, I know you probably while you were overseas and in your deployments, I imagine you probably saw a lot of stuff within, back to back or in close consecution to one another. With officers, it's a little bit differently because we have no days off. There is just where we're constantly in it, except for the 2 days that you have off throughout the week and your weekend. Um, but do you find it yourself being less sympathetic looking back about the things that you experienced?
Guess that kind of gets subjective. What do you mean by what do you mean by sympathetic?
And maybe I said the wrong thing, not sympathetic, but like, I find myself caring less and less about just the insignificant things. And even things that for say like a civilian would be traumatic, like I kind of just shrug it off, or it's like water on a duck's back for me. This the and we could always make it a joke and say like, oh well, I didn't get the low fat milk in my latte, and it just kind of ruined your entire day. Obviously, that's ridiculous to us. But even people that are like, oh well, I got in a car crash and it was really bad. I've had to catch myself some time. not really forcing empathy, but just really kind of having to take a step back and being like, I see car crashes all the time. They mean nothing to me nowadays. In fact, they're almost the bane of my existence because I have to go deal with this person. I have to go deal with this person. I have to jot down all their information. I have to then file the report, and then I have to write a citation and all that jazz. So to me, I translate or I equate a traffic collision to work for me. Whereas somebody else will see that as probably the most traumatic experience they've had in their week, month, year, whatever. Looking back on the things that you did overseas, obviously it resonated with you at the time, but looking back on it now, do you find yourself having less and less empathy for yourself going through it, or in sympathy for people that may have suffered through it?
I don't know, man. It's you kind of just grow into it. I don't know how to explain it. You'll probably understand it more than I think you will, but you see, like, for instance, the very first time, it kind of doesn't tie much to what it ties into the story because things you kind of get accustomed to. But I mean, the very first time I got deployed, I was, I don't know, like 21 or something. And I remember going to Iraq and go out to this small little cop, like I am the size of a football field, man. Had a tank on the north side, a tank on the south side. Well, they weren't actual tanks, but basically, up armored vehicles. And I remember the first time we started taking IDF, man, I about shit myself. I thought I'll hit the game. Oh, this is it. I'm done. It's game over. This is how I'm going out. Obviously I made it. And it's funny because anybody's been over there, they know what I'm talking about. Incoming. Like they hear that, they know what I'm talking about. That happened. I have no way to count it, but let's just make it. It's like thousands of times more happened to me, and it got to the point where even on future deployments, I would just sleep through it. I'm like, if I'm getting hit, I'm getting hit. This is game over.
Yeah.
I don't still care.
You get inoculated to it. It's like
Yeah.
it doesn't phase you now.
So there's that aspect of it. Then you come back stateside, and it's hard for what I find difficult, and I keep it to myself. I'll be honest with you, because I know there's no way for me to put it out there in a way that people would understand unless they've gone through it. But when I hear people that tell me they get like PTSD from listening to audio scripts and stuff, like just didn't actually go through, or they see like F&B, like full motion video, like stuff they saw on video. And don't get me wrong, it's traumatic shit. It's bad. But then I hear that they get like PTSD from that, and I'm like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around that, knowing what I physically went through, and that. So
That's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do in my head. Do I vocalize it and say no? Because I understand everyone's experience is their own experience. I think that comes with just, maturity. I'm not gonna be that guy. Well, back in my day, like it's not, their experiences are different. But what I do to try to put out there, I'm like, each one of you need to deal with your situation the best you can, and take your story and develop through it the best you can, learn from it. Be aware of what you're going through and how you're internalizing it. But I can tell you, it can always be worse. So
Sure.
make sure you take that and grow with it the best you can. And just know that this may not be the life for you, because I can promise you, you're watching this video. Tomorrow we could be in Iran and you're seeing kids with their arms blown off. That happened in Iraq. I mean, it was one of the worst incidents I ever saw. Saw this little girl, and like 3 seconds later, bomb, she was gone. Like I saw parts of her body, like everywhere. It messes with your head. And even to this day, I still have nightmares about that shit. So it's stuff like that. So I try to explain, like, deal with what you're seeing today. Like, but remember, it could be worse. So you need to capture that and realize that and be ready for that tomorrow, because it could come. But to answer your question, yes, I 100% do. I just keep it to myself, or I have friends that went through similar shit that I did, that we talk about it. But
Yeah, I think
yeah.
that's probably the best advice you can give anybody is you have to kind of come up with your own coping mechanisms. I think there's a reason why you look at people in the military and look in law enforcement, and why we appear so cynical at times, or have like this we enjoy dark humor, is because that is our coping mechanism. There's no other way that you can look at stuff like that day in and day out and not have a cynical perspective on it. And for better or for worse, it gets us through it. But yeah, I imagine it was someone the same for you. I was just kind of curious if that was something that you've actually kind of addressed or dealt with yourself.
But yeah, still deal with it to this day, man. I think I've just gotten used to like bearing it, or I go bitch to my wife later or something. I don't know. Yeah,
So
it's
it's that stress inoculation, and you get used to it, and it's like, whatever. Bombs are going off, or gunshots are going off over here. It doesn't phase you anymore.
The yeah, man. Like I said, if I had a better answer, I'd give it to you. But even going to like therapy and stuff. Like I tried talking to a doctor at one point. It just didn't do the same because I was like, my immediate question is like, "Hey, were you ever deployed?" And they're like, well, if they say no, I'm like, well, I'm going somewhere.
You have no
Yeah.
idea then.
You can tell me all the book knowledge you want, but
Right. You have no comparison whatsoever.
so yeah, and I've found group sessions actually. I talked to a group of that stuff, and I will say it helps know there's other people that experience it. Some of their stories are way worse than mine because they are actually like soft dudes.
Absolutely.
So it's good knowing that. And like you said, the dark humor, like always like my strong hand with my pinky and stuff. It's the if you only know if you've been through it, it is what it is.
Sure.
So it's interesting you get into that. So we tried separating, and it's good you learned that, man. Because I can tell you right now, all the deployments, I'll say that messed my head up in terms of always having to be on the go. Even to this day, I struggle with not being engaged. And that's another thing that's come into this society and this generation is like the constant apps, the text, the phone. We're talking about recalls and stuff. And I'm like, back in my day, it was all done by landline. So a recall could take like 8 or 9 hours. And now they're like freaking out if the recalls are done in 30 minutes via signal or whatever. So it's hard
if
to
if you wanted to hang out with your friends, you actually had to go over to their house and knock on their door,
Yeah,
not
right,
just text
right.
message and be like,
It's lost on this generation, but it's just it is what it is, man. We have to adapt and teach and learn from it the best we can. So it's good that you actually understand that when you need to disengage, be at home, you have that. Because I think it comes with maturity of your age and everything. But a lot of our younger guys, it's hard to like really put that forward. And it also sucks for me because I'm always engaged. I need to learn to be better at that. And just turn my shit off. But my Andre yells at me all the time about it. So that being said, I'm glad you have that. So when you take the uniform off, you're at home with your family and kids. So how does being a husband or father actually, what does that help? Does being a husband or father help drive your leadership values, your core values at work and vice versa?
yeah, I don't know if my wife would say it was for the betterment of the family dynamic at all, because I especially being in the academy for so long, or training in the academy for so long, I tend to be very strict in my dealings, especially with stuff with my kids. I expect them to listen to me the first time I tell them to do something. And, I try to be the best example I can for them. I know I'm not always the best example for them, but I try to be. But on top of that, instilling them with principles and ideas that I feel will benefit them in the future, not just right now. Being that leader, like you said, not just as a father, but as a mentor to them. Um, uh, it it's weird to explain how it may translate from being an officer, being a leader as an officer, to being a leader within the household. But there are certain parallels. It's just it tends to be a lot more difficult, especially if you don't have a spouse or a partner that kind of falls in line. My wife's Latina, and you can make whatever joke you want about that. She runs this household, and as much as I want to try to lay my foot down on certain issues, I tend to get overruled, and I just kind of have to learn, like, all right, well, I've lost that battle, or I'll learn to manage it another way. But at the same time, there are certain things that I do hold my ground, and usually that I may get some shit for it. I may get hated for it in the day, especially from her. And I know my kids get tired of me telling them to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. But I do it so that way in the future, I do only have to tell them once, or I don't have to tell them at all. And they just do it, and they become those uh, reflections and models of me, and what and obviously that's subjective from every person, what they believe is the right and wrong thing, and ways to behave and act. But yeah, it can be difficult going from the officer where everybody, well, I can't even say that now, because not a whole lot of people hold officers in high regards. They don't want to listen to us. They don't want to do what we're asking them to. So I guess in a way it does kind of is the kind of the same at home, where I tell them to do stuff and they don't listen to me or do anything I say either. So I don't know, man. I'm kind of lost at this point. So.
No, I get it, man. My wife's just Guatemalan, so I get it. I get yelled at a lot.
So there you go, the
Yeah.
Latina. They
Yeah.
rule the household, right?
It's interesting how it plays. That's a whole other episode. We'll talk about that another time. So
Yeah, let's not go down that road.
So it's funny you bring up your kids and how that And it's also interesting the dynamic because my wife's military, so a lot of things I can only imagine would be like not having a spouse in the similar career field that you're in because it's difficult. Because like you said, you can't just talk
No,
about the things because you don't
no,
want them to be involved in that. Like
no.
it's hard to like
Like
explain
I
something
said,
if you're not in it. Um,
that goes back to what I was telling you about leaving things at work is that she doesn't understand. She doesn't. She probably doesn't care about a lot of it either. And not to say that she doesn't care about me and my well being, because sometimes I'll call them home and I'll kind of share my accomplishments. I'll tell her it's like, hey, I shot 100 on this course of fire, or whatever the case may be. She's like, that's really good. But no, if we're in two completely different fields within our work, she's an engineer with Georgia Power. So it's like they're not polar opposites, but it's just like what can I say to her that will resonate with her, and kind of the same thing. What can she say to me that will resonate with me? And how do we make this work, especially when trying to keep a family together and raise kids? We're gonna have obvious differences of opinions and different approaches, but at the same time, you try to make it work. And we're kind of getting into uh, marriage and parenting advice here, which I don't know if we want to go down that route, but that's what it turns into eventually.
No, 100%. Our values, how we hold at work, like the repetition of training. I get it. Same thing with my kid. It's a core foundation of how to grow into something. So I get it. And it's interesting bringing into the kids thing. Um, Given the stuff that you've experienced as a law enforcement officer, and then similar ground with me, my son talking about he wanted to join the military when he's older. Part of me is like proud of that, but then the other part of
Yeah,
me is like, do I really want him to go through? Like, I know how effed I am in the head sometimes. Like, do I want him to experience that? And it's like I'm happy you wanna, do your thing for your country, but at the same time, let's find you go be a millionaire or something. Let's find to get you something.
yeah.
So, but in that grounds, how does it make you feel if your son when your son says he wants to be and get into law enforcement? Like, where's your head go with that?
Well, my first instinct was to kind of shrug it off because I don't know if he's a 5-year-old kid and he kind of says things at whim and things that make no sense from time to time. So when mommy asked him the questions like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? You want to be an engineer like mommy or a police officer like daddy? Of course he's going to go with the cooler of the two options. There's no question. Would you rather be an engineer or would you rather be a police officer? um, jokingly, again, during this community policing class I teach, I asked that very same question. It's like, why'd you become a police officer? And the funny part is that everybody always gives the answers like, oh, we actually want to help people and do stuff. And for the most part, that is a core belief that every officer has going into the profession. But I turn around and say, now, what's the actual reason you joined this job? And it's because you probably watch one too many episodes of Cops, or you put Bad Boys on repeat and say like, I can do this shit. And it's like, no, you really can't. So when he says stuff like that, yeah, I'm proud for a second, but at the same time, it's like I also know that he probably doesn't really know or understand what it is that he's saying. And I would kind of say the same thing to even an adult going into it is like, do you truly understand what it means to do this type of job? It means completely changing your entire life. You are going from whatever your level of comfort is now to maybe not ever sleeping during the day, or you're going to be constantly dealing with other people's problems on top of your own. You're going to have to deal with a level of liability that no one else has to face in any aspect of their profession. Um, and it's difficult to explain that to somebody, but when it comes to kind of setting a standard and creating a legacy within your family, if he was to legitimately say, hey, I want to be a police officer when he grows up, I'll be more than proud and more supportive of him. I'm going to try to do my best, if that's the case, to kind of prepare him for it as best as possible. And I think every parent, and especially every father for their son, um, and not to say that they don't do the same for their daughter, wants to prepare them for what it's like to be on their own, or when I'm not there anymore, just making sure that he's willing to face whatever life throws at him, and not necessarily needing to have me or his mommy show him how to do things or what to say or what to do. So uh, if that's the career path he wants to go down, like I'm gonna make sure he's ready for it, and I'm gonna support him the entire way. So.
That's good, man. That's the best we can do is make sure they're ready for the, whatever journey they're going on. It always gets weird though because when you talk about it's our job. Well, a lot of people believe it's our job as parents, even as trainers or supervisors in the military, law enforcement. It's our job to shield our training
Uh-huh.
whoever that's under us that we're in support of, shield them from the worst case scenario. But my argument to that is that it's actually not. It's your job to expose them to that so they're more ready. Um,
Correct.
and it's interesting. It's very interesting too because in today's time, when especially in my career field, because there's very few people in my career field that actually go out in the field and do stuff. Like I would say less than 1 or 2% of us ever did because it was a very select group of people. Um, but I bring up some of the things that we went through in Iraq and Afghanistan. They're like, "What does that matter? I'll never have to do that. I'm this or that. Like, we don't do this." I'm like, "We all
You
thought
never
the
know.
same thing, and then I ended up over there. Now like, I'm not. If you want to do odds and statistics, then yeah, maybe your odds are low, but that doesn't mean shit. Look what Iran right now. We shit could kick off. We could all be over there again. It you never know. So it's interesting to see when I'm talking to younger people when I bring this stuff up and they kind of glaze over and they're just like, "Oh, that won't be me. We're Air Force, or we did that." I'm like, "Okay, if you want to believe that, but your world's gonna be
That's
shook if the ego sideways really fast, you know?"
that is such a naive way of thinking, and we have to kind of, you know, really expose officers to what it is they could potentially be facing, especially earlier on in the career. And one of the ways that we explain that is, no bad guy in the history of policing has ever called you up before your shift and said, "Hey, 9 o'clock behind the convenience store, it's you and me, bro." It's never happening like that. So, you're not preparing for the fight that never happens. You're preparing for when and if it does happen, and that's pretty much it. And it's the same thing with kids. It's like you talked about, where our job is to expose them to that. I tell my recruits before they leave the academy, I'm going to make sure that you got punched in the face at least once before you leave here, because the last thing I want is for you to be out on the streets. The first time you get busted in the nose is when you're actually trying to take some guy in custody, and then you have no clue what to do after that. So, with kids, it's the exact same way. I'm going to make sure you get hurt, not to the point where it destroys your life, but if you get a scrape, if you get a bump, if you get a little boo boo here and there, I'm going to ask, okay, does it hurt? Yeah. Do we need to like cut it off and do say all the kind of funny dad comments about it? Okay, then if not, then shrug it off and let's keep moving. But other than that, we're not. Our job isn't to sugarcoat everything. Our job isn't to shield them. It is to make sure that they're prepared for when we are gone. Essentially.
No, I could not have said it better myself, man. Um, it's always interesting. She's gonna probably watch this and come yell at me later, but my wife likes to say she's the
Mine is too.
yeah. She likes to say, and don't get me wrong, she likes to say she's the quote unquote mean one. And don't get me wrong, there's sometimes the mom comes out, but for all intents and purposes, she actually will get so upset when she has to like punish or discipline our kids, like to the point where she has to go aside and she starts tearing up. I'm like, "You did the
Hmm.
right thing." Like, so
Yeah.
it's interesting. But I keep telling her, like, we had Don. I remember what it was like being a young boy, especially in the environment, and I can only imagine the stuff he's exposed to now. That's what trying to shield him from social media, all this other stuff, right? Things I never had to deal with because I wasn't. We didn't have that when I was a kid. So it's interesting to see how that goes, and we got to prepare him for it. But a lot of parents don't want to hurt their children or shield them. It's difficult, so I totally get it. Um, so that all being said, if you had to summarize your career into just one sentence, what would you hope it said? If you had to put like a quote on
Phew.
your I don't know, LinkedIn page, whatever, what would it say?
Uh, God, I don't know if I could even do that. Uh, I would say full. I know that's probably not a good descriptor, but it's just,
No, it carries more weight than you
you have.
think, man.
Yeah, it's a full career. It is a full job. Just because I probably touched on a lot of areas in my job that, or have, been involved in many areas of my job that some officers never even reached that level. I've been on the road like everybody does to start with, but I've worked investigations, I've worked training, I've worked field training, I've been experts and had certifications and things that officers never even obtain. Um, some of them, I can tell you right now, we've got officers in our department that are um, career patrolmen. Like they never even bothered trying to climb the ranks or anything like that. It's just they got comfortable or complacent wherever they are. And if that suits them, then good for them. And I wish them well in their career. That, it's not fully my ambition. It's not like I aspire to be the chief or anything like that. But I would like to eventually kind of climb the ranks to get to a point where I can make some actual serious change. Because let's be honest, as a sergeant, I'm a frontline supervisor. I have the impact on the people that are directly below me, but sometimes those are the most influential because they're the ones that are closest to the actual chaos, and far enough away from the politics and the BS that I'm not as heavily influenced by it. So my concern has been and always will be for the people that I train, people that are underneath me if I ever go back to the road. But yeah, to sum it up real simply in one word, I just say it was full. It was very full.
No, that's good, man. It's a solid way to end it. So for the last closing question before we call it quits, what's something about your profession, specifically as law enforcement, do you think that people really need to understand before they start to criticize it? If you had to sum that up.
Um, we're human, just like everybody on this earth. We have our faults, we have our flaws, we make our mistakes. We want the best for ourselves and want the best for the people that we stand beside and the people that we live alongside. So with that being said, give them a little bit of grace and allow for some empathy and some understanding. I talked about earlier, you never actually know if you're talking about a citizen officer encounter. You really never even know what the people that you encounter on a day-to-day basis were going through before you met them. So they could be having the best day, they could be having the worst day. That goes both ways. The officer could have just left a truly traumatic call that is going to sit with him for his entire career, to come deal with some BS that you're like, why did you call me for this? And the inverse is just the true, to where somebody could be experiencing a life-changing, life-altering incident that is just another Tuesday for me. So I would just say realize that we're all human. We make mistakes. Uh, we try for the best, but yet we all fall, short of the grace of God, essentially.
No, man, that's perfect, Colin. Yeah, I appreciate it. Um, Before we call it good on this, any last closing words you want to give? Shout out or anything?
No, man, I appreciate this opportunity. I hope you continue this, and I look forward to seeing whatever guests you have in the future to kind of talk about the same issues. And obviously, if you ever want me to come back and jump in, I'd be more than happy to.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. I'm gonna try to get a panel together eventually on a future episode of past guests and talk about a variety of things going on. But I appreciate having you, man. Look, conversations like this are exactly why no rank required exist. Tonight you heard from Collin Smith, not just a police sergeant, not just an instructor, but a man who stepped into a job most people will never fully understand. We talked about purpose, about responsibility, about the weight that comes with putting on a uniform. Whether that's law enforcement, military, or any other role where your decisions affect another person's life. And one thing that stood out tonight, behind every badge, every rank, every title, there's still a human being. Someone who's seen things that most people never will. Someone who still goes home and tries to be a husband, a father, a regular person after carrying the chaos of the day. That's the reality that most people don't see or even think about. So whether you agree with someone's profession or not, remember that truth. Because the goal of this show isn't to tell you what you think or maybe even what you think you want to hear. It's to remind you that everyone has a story. And if we're willing to listen, we might just learn something from each other. This is No Rank Required. I'm Justin Aaron, and we'll see you next time.